I'm Hannah Moore, CFP, a practicing financial planner and educator. I'm on a mission to change the way people think and talk about money. Let's get started. Today, I want to talk to you about when it feels like you're not making progress. I was just talking to a new client about this, and they were frustrated because they're like, why is this so hard? Why do I not feel like I'm making progress? Now, to their credit, they're in my office, so they're doing something about it, and that alone is progress. But it was such an interesting question, and one that I hear oftentimes, certainly with clients, but definitely with my friends, and just in general when I'm talking to people in life. It's we have these big financial goals, right? These big financial dreams of being able to retire. Perhaps you want to be a millionaire. Perhaps you want to pay off your house. Perhaps you want to get out of debt or get out from underneath the student loans that you guys have right now. Whatever that may be for you, it can be very frustrating to feel like you're not making progress. So let's break this down a little bit. So the first thing I want to start with is the importance of just pausing and reflecting and saying, okay, is it true that we're not making progress? Now, I will tell you that I have struggled with this myself of, in my business, in our personal finances as well, of just feeling so frustrated. I just want to turn up the clock. I want to fast forward the clock, I guess, and just see how this plays out. And, when I'm really honest with myself, I realize that this is not an overnight thing, right? When we look at wealth growing in this country, it is not an overnight thing. It is a year by year, decade by decade process, which is really, really frustrating for somebody like me who wants an instant gratification. But when I say pause and reflect, I want you to think back. Where were you at 5 years ago? Where were you at 10 years ago? What did you want your life to be like? I recently was going through a lot of my papers and stuff that I have and wanted to get us. And one of the things I found was I had written out, I think it was right before we got married or right after we got married, of where I wanted to be it was like 3, 5, and 10 years. And I was having one of those moments where I was like, I feel like we're making no progress, like we're not doing, all these things. And I realized that we had actually accomplished most of the things that were on that list before the timelines that I had given. So these things that felt impossible, that felt like such a strong reach for us, we had achieved, or we were, on our way to achieving. And so it was a really good kind of wake up call for me. So if you guys are frustrated with not knowing, you feel like you're not making progress, just pause for a minute and write down, where were you 5 years ago? What did that look like for you? And again, progress doesn't mean more money. I mean, it can for certain. And hopefully over time that does translate to more freedom, financial freedom for you. But it could be, we wanted to have kids and now I have kids and I'm staying at home with my kids, or I'm balancing. I've had to step back from my career a little bit in order to take my kids. That's still progress, right? It's still on this larger picture of living out what it is that you want to be doing with your life and your dreams and everything that you want. And so I don't want to discount that at all. But look back and say, where were you 5 years ago and where are you today? Would your 5 years ago, would that be would you be proud of where you are today? Would you be glad to know that you've made the progress that you've made in that time? And if the answer is yes, we need to give ourselves some credit. We do not give ourselves enough credit on these things of making progress. We always maybe I should speak to myself, often look forward to the future rather than looking back and seeing where we've come from to really appreciate that. Now, you could be a person who's looking at this and saying, you know what, Hannah, that's kind of a Pollyanna view there. We're not where we want to be. And I think that's really powerful as well. We talk about money scripts often, or I talk about money scripts often, and it's this idea of what are the stories, what are the narratives that we tell ourselves about money in our situation that influence us. And so you might have a money narrative of, oh, it's always going to be okay. But this might be the wake up call that you need to say, no, I do need to make a change. I do need to look at another career. I do need to look at really getting our spending under control, or really, what are the things that need to change in our life? And if that's the case, like this is an invitation to do that, of really looking and saying, what is it that you need? What are the changes that you need to make? And so I just also want to not acknowledge that sometimes, like, yes, we can make progress and not realize it, but there are times where it's like, hey, no, let this be a wake-up call that something in your life needs to change. Okay, so the next step is really taking stock of where you are in your life. What's going well? What's not going well? What are the things that you want to, what are the things that you're doing well in, and what are the things that you're not doing well in? And just being really, really honest with yourself on this. And this can be something where, depending on how analytical you are, you can track metrics on. This again, I'm thinking of personal and financial. So when you think about personal side of things, it can be, for me, I'm in a very busy season of life. You can't see it right here. I'm 35 weeks pregnant. I am trying to wrap up all of my work things to really be able to take maternity leave and do all these things. And when I look at this, I'm not investing in some of my friendships the way that I want to be investing in that. And I'm doing other things, but it's important to recognize and take stock of where you are today. From a financial standpoint, it's important to just track where you are. So this can be as simple as creating what we call a net worth statement, where you literally write, you could do it right now if you guys know where your accounts are. Take a sheet of paper on the left-hand side, or on one side of the paper, it doesn't really matter. Write out all of your assets. So what are all of the positives that you have in your financial situation? That can be bank account balances. It can be you have a car. It can be if you have a home, your home value. Put all of that on one side of the page. And then on the other side, what you're going to do is you're going to put all of your debts. So what is it that you owe people? So this could be, we're not talking about like electricity bill or anything like that. So think like larger than a month. So on that, think of, if you have credit card debt, if you have student loans, if you have a car payment, if you have a mortgage, if you owe a friend or family money, put that on there. And then what you do is you just kind of add up both sides, and then you come up with a number of your net worth. So if your assets are bigger than your liabilities, so if what you have is bigger than what you owe people, you have a positive net worth. And then if it's the other way, you just have a negative net worth. Now, there is nothing wrong or bad with that. In fact, most people start out with a negative net worth. Now, here's what's cool about tracking it though. So we just did this. Hopefully you just did this exercise or thinking through it. So what's really cool about putting this in writing is do it again in 3 months. And you're going to start seeing progress. So let's give your student loans, for example. If you're making payments on those student loans, every day, every time you make a payment, you're increasing your net worth. And every time you make a mortgage payment, you're increasing your net worth. So it can feel like you're not making progress when in reality you really are making progress. And so it's going to help you kind of see that continuum along that line of saying like, hey, are we making progress? I'll tell you. So we did this, my husband and I, we started doing this a couple years ago because again, I was falling into this trap of saying like, I'm not making progress. Like I need to work harder. I need to do more. I need to do all these things to feel like I'm making progress. When in reality, we really were making progress, but we didn't recognize that we were making progress. And so putting it on a sheet, we have just a Google sheet that we track every quarter. And it helps both of us to see the progress that we're making on this. The next piece is to really quantify where you want to be. Now, this can be hard. One of the things that people struggle with is this idea of what is a good financial goal? Like where should we be targeting? What does this look like? We could have maybe we will have a whole nother episode just on that, because for some people it's really, really easy. And for other people, it can be really, really hard and difficult on this. But quantify where you want to be on this. So I gave the example earlier of taking stock where you're at and using this example of friendship, right? Of, I'm in a really busy season of life. I'm not able to invest in friends. And right now in the way that I would want to normally be doing that. And so saying, okay, so I'm not where I want to be on that. What is it that I do want? Let's think through, what does this look like? In thinking through that, it's like, okay, well, I want to be able to feel like I'm supporting other people and the other people are supporting me. Practically, maybe this means that twice a week I want to be able to get together with somebody. Okay, so let's break that down even more. So that could mean that I'm going to lunch with somebody. I need to prioritize putting a lunch date on my calendar with a friend during the day when I have childcare and all of that. My kids are young, so maybe it's a play date with a friend on the weekend or something like that. But saying, you know what, I want to target 1 to 2 times a week to meet up with somebody and just be friends, just be Hannah with them, right? So I don't know what that looks like for you. It could be you want more joy in your life. Okay? So what does that mean? Let's break that down. What are the activities that make you feel joyful? And break that down into kind of bite-sized pieces so that you can have just something to target and try to do. And then you get to reassess, right? There's no shame in any of this of trying to be more, to do more, anything like that. It's really just trying to say, like, hey, if these are the things that we want, what are the actions that we need to do to get there? And making it really, really tangible, right? Because that's where it gets so overwhelming. Now, when we look at our finances, this is where it especially gets overwhelming because where do I want to be financially? I mean, oftentimes I'll ask people and they're like, I want to be okay. I want to know that I can retire someday. I want to know, like, I just feel like we've been floating along. I want to have a plan. And that's a good one right there. I want to be able to have a plan. We were just talking with some new clients who are going to be joining us soon. And that was their goal. They're like, we're making good money now and we don't know where it's going. We just want to know that we're going to be having a plan. And it's like, okay, so let's break this down. Now, number one, they're getting help, which is a huge step. So we're going to walk them through the whole process of what that looks like. But it can be simple things of, I want to have an emergency fund. And just tracking these things. It can be, I know we're spending too much, right? I mean, my husband and I we went and looked back at how much money we spent last month. And we're like, oh, okay, we need to be more on top of this going forward. But it can simply be as simple as, hey, every month I want to look back and see where we spent our money. I just want to see if I want to make sure that we're bringing in more money than we're spending. It can be a really simple thing like that. And those are going to be those foundational building blocks that you're going to be doing. Now, a lot of my job is helping clients achieve or work towards some of these bigger goals of retirement, of college savings, of things like that. And it is frustrating. Y'all, I know this. It is frustrating to see when you put money into an account and you're like, this isn't growing. This is just sitting like, it's frustrating, right? But think about this. A 10% growth on $100 is $10, right? $10. I mean, that's like not even a trip to McDonald's or Starbucks or, a lot of places you can't even buy lunch for $10 anymore. Certainly you can in a lot of places, but it's not as easy, right? And you're like, wait a minute. So an entire year I literally made like one lunch. Like, this is crazy, 10% on $1,000. You're like, oh, okay, it's $100, but still, that's not that much. Like, I'm not seeing the needle move. 10% on $100,000, you're like, okay, $110,000, like, that's cool. We can work with that, right? That seems more substantial now. And then we go to like $1 million, and 10% on $1 million is $100,000, right? It's the same percentage of growth. And so what you're doing, what's so frustrating is that it's easy to see that $100,000 and be like, hey, I'm doing great. It's the same concept, but we have to start small. And it's really, really hard. It's really, really hard to see that and to be committed to that. Because that's where the growth takes place. And so oftentimes we'll see clients where it just feels like they're just not making any progress, and then it kind of spikes up for them. And that's just really the power of this compounding interest that's there. I think about it with my kids too. It's not a sprint to make sure that they have everything that they need. It's just being consistent day in and day out, being there, letting them know that they're loved day in and day out. And that's what's going to make the bigger difference rather than one magical thing I say to them. I mean, Maybe there is that moment. I can only be so lucky, but it's really that day in and day out consistency that makes a difference for a lot of these financial goals. And perhaps you're saying, "Hey, I'm not even at the point of investing," and that's okay. It's going to be the day in and day out of consistency on making sure that you're spending money well, making sure that you're spending money that's aligned to what's important to you, making sure that you're spending money that you're not spending more than you're bringing in. Just some of those concepts can make all the difference. So the last thing, if you guys feel like you're getting stuck, get help, right? I was talking to a friend recently, even about the friendship thing. I was like, I need more friends in my life, right? Like this is what I need. And they had ideas, they had connections, they had places to go, they had people for me to meet, they had events for me to join them in. And that was just simply reaching out and getting help. And that's the same thing with your finances as well, is just reaching out and getting help. You don't have to do this alone. Now, that getting help can look like a lot of different ways. It can look like, if you are married or have a significant other, it can be like, "Hey, I want to work on this together with you." That can be getting help. It can be, going to your spouse or significant other and saying, "You know what? I really struggle. I really struggle with budgeting or watching this. This is not, my brain just doesn't work this way, and I just have always struggled with this. Will you help me with this?" It could be talking to a friend and just saying like, "Hey, like what's working for you and your family? Like, you seem to kind of know how this works. What does that look like for you?" Or help could be going and actually working with a financial planner or a financial coach or something like that to really take that next step in making sure that you guys have control of your finances, and that you're on that pathway, right? Because even in these steps where it feels like we're not making progress, we really are, but you just have to make sure that it's just fine-tuned right, in doing that. So I hope that's helpful. I hope that you know that if you don't feel like you're making progress, that it is possible to make progress on this. And who knows, you might already be making more progress than you know. Thanks for listening to this episode of Everyday Money with Hannah Moore. If you like what you heard, subscribe and check out livewealthynow.com. We have a lot more resources to help you live wealthy now.